Welcome to another episode of Connecting the Lines. Today, we're diving into the world of infrastructure investment. But not just any investment. Think transcontinental railroad or interstate highway system. The types of massive, generational, and nationwide projects that require a mix of public and private funding. These projects are meant to connect and benefit everyone, including the nation as a whole. And today, one such generational build-out is high-speed broadband. So we'll discuss the Investment and Jobs Act that's driving this, why it's needed, and what the recent program shakeups mean for the future of high-speed broadband in America. And joining me to discuss these topics are two renowned experts on this topic. David Malfara, more than 45 years of experience in network engineering and business strategy, founder and principal of Big Bang Broadband. Can you explain what Big Bang Broadband is?
Big Bang Broadband is a consultancy involved in developing complex business cases, business plans for the deployment of broadband, both for broadband internet access service for the general consumer market and small business, and also large coherent optical networks for commercial entities.
Okay, great. Also senior member of IEEE, member of Open XR Optics Forum, and also sit on Florida's Marion County Local Technology Planning Team.
Yes.
And you've also served as a federal court subject matter expert, which sounds very
Several
interesting.
times, yeah.
Okay. So what do those cases involve?
Oh my gosh, everything from disputes between cities and construction companies in terms of broadband deployment, intricacies of federal law as it is operationalized within operating companies, Universal Service Fund, a number of different things, yes.
Okay, great. And we also have Dan Levac, over 40 years experience in the communications industry, Fiber Broadband Association committee member, SCTE Buckeye chapter president, just named president this year, I believe, right?
Correct.
PCCA Hall of Fame inductee, good for you. I think I have this correct, named on 6 patents for OSP products.
Up to 8.
Oh, up to 8. Okay, so pending?
No, we've got 8 now.
Oh, okay.
And then there's more pending.
Okay. Also, our first 2-time PLP podcast guest. So thanks for coming back.
Appreciate that.
You must have had fun the first time.
I did. It was a blast.
Okay. And also apparently doing your best Ray Charles impression with the sunglasses or Corey Hart or something.
I'm glad you asked about the sunglasses, Josh. That was an amazing question. Let me answer it this way. I believe that fiber optics has an amazingly bright, very bright future. And I think not only fiber, but the connectivity and the hardware that goes along with it and the deployment strategy of fiber. Dave, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's great. You're right on. And so the glasses are worn, but you're taking them off now.
Yeah, I'm ready to go now. I'm in serious business.
Okay.
Okay.
So to kind of set the stage here, so we're talking about infrastructure investment, and the U.S. Has a long history of this kind of public-private investment in infrastructure. I kind of looked up some of the stuff. So we started with the Transcontinental Railroad, which was Pacific Railways Act of, I think, 1862 and 1864. You had the rural electrification, which was during the New Deal and FDR. You had the interstate highway system. And now we're going through what the IIJA is, the infrastructure kind of modernization. So the IIJA is the investment, or maybe you guys can explain what the IIJA is better.
Well, before you get there, you missed another one that was done in the United States that's almost as important.
Okay.
And that's the plain old telephone system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The POTS lines, we got up, there was a line to every home,
1934.
right? That's
Yeah.
when it started, but it was generational.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's another key issue that we want to make about this. Every one of these big plans, if you will, or investment by the government are generational moves.
Yeah.
A lot of money and a lot of deployment that has to be done.
Right. But the IIJA is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I think it's like $1.2 trillion.
That's right.
And covers everything from transportation, so things like highways, mass transit, water, energy, and then broadband is in there. And that's mainly what we're going to talk about today. So there's the BEAD program, which is the $42.5 billion funding initiative. So I guess, again, just at the high level, what is BEAD? Explain, how that was originally structured. There's some changes going on, which we're going to talk about. But, just originally structured, what was the goal and the mechanics and stuff.
Josh, before we get to BEAD, I think you hit the really important point at the beginning, and that was the IIJA itself was looked at as the modernization of America's infrastructure. So that's why it hit. In electricity, smart grid, smart metering, water monitoring as far as quality, consistency, things of that sort. Department of Transportation, as we bring smart vehicles on board, speaking from the vehicle to the network itself and making sure that all the information necessary for safe driving and safe transport was there. There's a number of different divisions, they're called, in the IIJA itself. The BEAD division is one, broadband is one, but that is specifically for the deployment of broadband throughout even residential locations. And
if I can interject just a second,
ahead,
Dave.
Sure.
Two of the key words in that whole bill, infrastructure and jobs.
Yeah.
Remember those two words above all, right?
Right.
Because there's a misnomer right now that there's people talking about service applications instead of the infrastructure first. We can't put the cart before the horse there. As long as I've known Dave, I never heard him say that there is no place for LEO or there's no place for FWA.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
So,
and I think those both are good supplemental technologies that are able to get us into locations that you just can't get there any other way. However, back to IIJA and the fact that we are talking about infrastructure. Let me put the issue from the perspective of investment. If you are a state and you're looking at the allocation of, BEAD money, for example, to your state, that was based on the number of unserved and underserved broadband service locations, houses, things of that sort that you have. But the reality of the situation is we're also looking at the IIJA in its larger context of modernizing American life. So broadband permeates all of that as the connective tissue that allows smart operation of different utilities, smart operation of necessary resources. And one of those certainly is broadband internet access service, but it is part of the whole. And the whole requires broadband, which I'll use that in the general context of the entire information flow system. And then broadband internet access service is a subordinate focus. But it involves the whole thing. So you don't just get to look at BEAD as a singular, isolated program. It's part of the entire IIJA. Yeah.
So again, I guess looking at just talking about BEAD though, and what that broadband is. So what it is, you mentioned it briefly, but that's an initiative to take high-speed broadband, basically coast to coast, to every home and business.
Exactly.
Correct? Because there's a lot of unserved and underserved communities and individuals and locations out there. Correct?
So if I can take a look at that initially, and let's start there. What is unserved and what is underserved?
Yeah.
Okay. So unserved, you're below a certain speed, doesn't matter what the speed is. It's useless right now anyway. It's 25 down, 3 up. But underserved is a location that cannot get the 100 megabit down and 20 megabit up. Okay, that's also the floor of the BEAD program. Now, within the context of when BEAD was written, when the law itself, the act was written, you were talking about that study being done actually in the late 2019, early 2020 era. And when you take a look at when BEAD was actually passed, the IIJA was passed, that was 2021. And now here we are in 2025. We've got a 4-year build period. And now all of a sudden we're talking about networks being built that may not be operational until 2030.
Right.
Okay?
To standards that were established in 2019.
So the BEAD program itself has a integrated anomaly in it, and that is with the 2 statutory parts of the requirement. The first is, 100 down, 20 up, right? And then the second is, but you got to keep pace with what's happening right now.
Got to be scalable.
In commercial and residential. And by hitting 100 down and 20 up at the end of the build period, you're already in violation of the second prong, because you can't do that you can't achieve both the results at once unless you're looking at a technology that's able right away to handle what's required in 2030, which is the beginning of the performance period.
You're saying something is easily upgradable.
Well, it's got to be scalable. You've got to be able to move for what's coming next, right? Because we'll talk about what's next. Yeah. There's a lot that's coming down the pike. Right. But before you put the cart before the horse, a lot of the things that were discussed in Washington when myself, through various organizations and directly with PLP, we went to Washington to discuss the issue with people from the NTIA, people from the FCC, people from the Commerce Department, and also on Congress, like on the Hill in the Senate or on the House and the Senate. And we told them that 120 was actually obsolete already, that they should be looking at symmetrical service.
So I think Congress was actually either wise or stumbled into a good cover, which is the second prong required within the BEAD program, and that's a statutory requirement that it keep pace. And so you didn't have to worry in that case. You didn't have to worry how long it took the NOFO to come out. You didn't have to worry about the FCC broadband map. You didn't have to worry about the length of time it took to build these networks. The fact was Congress verbalized the requirement in such a way that when that project comes out, it must meet the requirements of the public at that point in time.
Okay.
So 120 may have been useful at some point, but you're talking to an engineer, and I would tell you that right now, nobody is building 100 down, 20 up right now.
So, I mean, you alluded to this a little bit, but the program was originally, and we're going to talk about the changes, but the program was originally a fiber first program. Why?
Because everyone knew that fiber was really an unlimited resource in terms of bandwidth, capacity, speed, agility, flexibility in supporting different applications. And that was not learned in isolation or academically. That was learned out in the field. That was learned with Reconnect programs, with BIP, with BTOP, with RDOF, with everything, frankly, that we had done before, all of these programs. This is I think the 6th time that we've tried to provide broadband for all. Okay, so we've been at this for a while. Fiber is an infrastructure that is necessary for broadband internet access, but for all of those other divisions in the IIJA. So if we consolidate the need, we're going to be more effective with how we use those dollars to be able to deploy what we need in terms of modernization.
Okay.
And so, it was a great plan. Other technologies, like I say, nothing against those. Low Earth orbit satellite is great. I don't necessarily want to look up in the sky and see 42,000 birds, which is what the full deployment of Starlink is. Add Kuiper to that, add what other countries are doing, and it's going to be a mess real quickly. But we said something interesting in RDOF. The FCC said, RDOF is not a program that's to be used as a proving ground for emerging technologies. It's just not meant to be that. We need tried and tested technologies that we can look at as a stable baseline for people to receive services. Okay, well, Starlink itself, and love Starlink and everything going on with it, but it is not that. Okay, there are many things. I won't go into solar weather events and things that affect the useful life. I don't know if everyone knows that every Starlink satellite needs to be replaced every 5 years, and 5 years is sort of the max because all of these events like weather events and things like that introduce the drag and reduce the fuel of satellites, and they can have less of a useful life. But we don't know. We don't know about these technologies, and that's what the FCC meant by, this isn't a proving ground. We have to buy real capability. Second of all, look at infrastructure. Every state, there was a reason Congress said, okay, states, you know what you need, and in every state, we're going to put you in charge of the pocketbook, okay? So you go out, you take a look at the subgrantees that produce projects of interest, and then choose what's going on. Low Earth orbit satellite is very much a service, not an infrastructure. So what does that mean to a state? It means that money, that $1 billion that you got, it's not going into your coffers. Forget that. Okay, it's going straight to, whoever the LEO provider is at that time for every dollar that gets spent on that. More importantly, the performance period is only 10 years. Okay, the useful life of fiber. I'm getting back to your question about why fiber. The useful life of fiber is right now documented is 50 plus years, okay? It's longer than that, but we haven't had that much experience with it, so we don't know. Now, we also have the benefit in fiber of knowing, and I'll get in the weeds a little bit, photons in solid core fiber right now are transmitted at speeds of 200,000 kilometers per second, okay? The speed of light in a vacuum is 300,000 kilometers per second. We're doing that right now in hollow core fiber. Hollow core fiber is in production right now. And if you, for example, have conduit in the ground, microduct in the ground, whatever it is, it's an easy process to pull that out and to put hollow core fiber in there. So we're talking about building what I call layer 0, which is conduits, ducts, vaults,
Dave, can I take that piece a little
go ahead.
In a different direction, but right in line with what you're talking about? So Dave said that we have to build this, we have to do this. So I want to take that fiber question, Josh, down a little bit different path because Dave is way more cerebral than I am. So I want to bring it down to my level for just a second, and I want to talk about jobs. That's also a word that's in that bill from the from 2021. So the job aspect of it, for every one fiber splicer, how many fiber splicers do you need for LEOs? None. For every fiber splicer that's going to work on fiber, you need 20 construction jobs. How many construction jobs do you need for LEOs? Oh, none. Okay, forget that one then. For every 20 construction jobs that are out there, How many manufacturing and distribution and other jobs do you need? 45. Oh, wait a minute. Let's go a little bit further. How many trained instructors do you need to teach everybody how to do all this stuff? Up to 200.
Mm-hmm.
So look at the Jobs Act part of this and
Such
understand
a good
that
point.
and understand that what we're losing sight of is Dave made a comment right there about the states getting the money to be able to deploy for what they need. That includes jobs. That
and this
includes,
is permanence.
Absolutely.
This is something that
Right.
injects
Generational.
permanence into into
oh,
what
it's beyond generational.
yeah,
It's forever.
yeah.
Because in order to maintain this infrastructure, and again, back to the keyword infrastructure, you have to continue to maintain it. Even though you've got a 50-year life cycle with fiber, there's still things that has to be done to it in order to keep it alive and to keep it moving. Copper's been in existence for over 125 years. There's still copper out there that's used today that was used in the early 1900s.
Wow. So, I mean, you talked about this a little bit because you said, when this started in 2019 and then the bill passed, and then I think we've been 3 years since that passed, but there still hasn't been no shovels in the ground, I don't think.
No,
and
not
but
a
this
single
is-
one.
And again, let's talk before this shakeup, which we're going to get to. Why is it taking so long?
There were a number of things that really needed to be done, okay? One of them was we had no idea what an eligible broadband service location was. We had the FCC identifying locations that were the middle of a parking lot, don't need broadband. There were others where entire swaths of communities were missing. So we need to reconcile what was there with what we thought was there. That was the FCC broadband map, okay? And a lot of errors in that map, even now, and no easy way to accommodate the building of things in the United States. But it's much better than anything that we've had, and it is a good launch point. That took a long time to put together. The NOFO itself, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, a lot of thought process had to go into, all right, how do we introduce a broadband program that does not suffer the consequences of the previous ones that we've already done? So a reevaluation of BIP and BTOP and Reconnect and RDOF actually was done. And I, spoke to a number of NTIA officials about the very problems that we had in those programs. And they were doing their best to identify ways around those. NTIA evaluated different technologies at the beginning of this as well. It came to the conclusion, frankly, that, we can dance around this subject as much as we want. Fiber is the, end all be all as far
Kind of
as
the gold
building
standard.
It is the best medium.
infrastructure.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the best medium. There's no question about it.
So, by the way, just as a sidebar, Japan just transmitted 1 petabit per second over a fiber
like that.
infrastructure. Fiber infrastructure consisting of 19 8.5 micron thick fibers. Okay, so think about that and how small it is. You can hardly see it.
Wow.
Right now, just to give you an example, I can put 864 of those strands into a cable that's less than a half an inch thick. Okay,
Wow.
So you think about capability, tremendous ability to be future-proof, to handle advanced services, and nothing compares to fiber. People think it's sort of a vested interest by people who have different parts of the supply chain for fiber. It isn't that. It's way past that.
And then Dave's also made comments about the infrastructure bill or law in regards to fiber and BEAD being a part of a larger overall play. Think about what's necessary in this country to move forward. Not only generation of power, we need the transmission, we need the distribution, And then along with that infrastructure is going to be the fiber.
Yeah.
You have to think about that in terms of data centers. Everybody's planning all these great big data centers.
Oh, it's
They're a
crazy.
power
I was
suck.
just reading about it. It's just billions and
So
billions.
then take that on what are those data centers going to do, right? They're going to look at AI, quantum computing,
Yep.
all of these things that are way out there, we've got to be prepared for. So that's part of that infrastructure bill that we have to look at and understanding the value that everybody brings to that. Like the guys that are out there that I was just referring to that are going to get the jobs for the fiber aspect of it or the deployment of that infrastructure, multiply that by 5 or 10, because now you're going to have infrastructure in the terms of generation of power, transmission of power, distribution of power, and then again the fiber that's going to go out all these data centers, and then where does it go from there? Just one more thing.
Go ahead.
My new term is trickle-down fibernomics. I had to get that in.
That's a good term.
The reason I'm using that term, though,
Yeah.
is if you think about trickle-down fibernomics, it's not just about the broadband aspect of it and to get broadband to an individual person. Everything that's tied to it. Josh and Dave, we're at a table right now that's built out of a fiber reel. There's value in that. It's utilized.
Yeah.
Now, that's taking it down to the lowest denominator, but my point being is that look what fiber passes along the way.
Yeah.
If you look at the value or the journey of fiber and the value that it brings, it's absolutely amazing if you just give it a second. How many hospitals, doctor's office, medical centers, assisted living facilities, memory care facilities, teaching hospitals, research centers, telehealth at its best. That gives us the opportunity to get that to every man, woman, and child of this country. That's being missed. I can go on for hours. I can talk about schools.
Individual
ag.
applications and individual industries that frankly can only live on a fiber broadband
Absolutely.
infrastructure. But, one of the things that I'll say as well that fiber gives us as design engineers, as people who look at, a feasibility study and look at what we anticipate the growth is going to be in various areas so that we can build infrastructure that will support it. What fiber gives you as a design engineer is the freedom not to care what's coming, okay? You know you're going to be able to handle it if you put fiber in the ground or fiber up in the air. None of those other technologies, not one, okay, can give you that capability. Second of all, as far as the redundancy of the infrastructure itself, many people don't know that a passive optical network, as they are deployed today, don't have protection routes, redundancy, things of that sort in the distribution network. We have built the standards for that. Type B protection in XGS-PON is that, but nobody's deployed it yet. However, with fiber, unlike redundancy and recovery in any other technology, with fiber, all we have to do is do it. We have to get in the splice closure, put in a new splitter tray, and we're good.
He's talking about the PLP Coyote splice closures.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Gotta love coyotes. I bought lots of them. But the fact is that with fiber, that's just an incremental process to be able to do that. There's no, going in and bringing out the horizontal directional drilling rig or, plowing a field again or going over to the spaceport and launching a new array of satellites. It is simple work that we have now trained the people to do, the restoration and maintenance people to do, and we've got a living ecosystem that's able to support the broadband requirements, even the ones we don't know about yet, for 100 years. And that really is what I think's at stake here. If we spend $42.45 billion on what amounts to a service, because that's what Starlink is, okay? And in terms of unlicensed fixed wireless, what you're doing is paying for radios that are probably going up on existing towers for the most part. So you're building nothing lasting.
What are those towers fed with, Dave?
Oh, gee. fiber.
They
Aren't
are?
Dan? Yeah.
Isn't that something? And I know I should never ask a question that I don't know the answer to on one of these podcasts, but I have to ask it anyways. What do you think the control tower for SpaceX or the control center feeds the tower for the rocket with? Do you think that's SpaceX? Do you think that's a satellite that's giving that information?
I know
over
the
there?
Distributor that Starlink uses to provide the fiber that goes there.
You gotta be kidding me.
Right. But I mean, that's and it's only because that when you take away all of the politics, when you take away all of the subtle, nuanced influences, what you end up with is an ability to make a choice wherein fiber is the only answer. I mean, it just is the infrastructure
It's been proven,
answer.
Yeah.
even by the technologies that want to say that they're the lead.
Yeah. They all, you know what, do this. Tell them, all right, we'll give you the contract. Do it without fiber. They can't.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
So we've kind of been dancing around it. So let's get into it now. So there was this shakeup. There was new BEAD guidance, which I think is still evolving, it sounds like. But in June, so Howard Lutnick, who's the Secretary of Commerce, issued new guidance. I think one of the biggest ones that we've been talking about is that it's no longer a fiber first. It's now what they call technology neutral.
Which I'd
That's
be okay
loaded.
with. Would I be okay with
I'm
that?
not.
No, I would be if that's truly what it was.
Okay, so
Well,
then explain.
yeah,
If.
but it isn't.
Right.
And you can, okay, let's be real blunt here.
Yeah.
You can talk right out of the box. Do you know that and I hate to beat up on Leo's, but this is true. Do you know that every subscriber to Leo's service, every 15 seconds, has to switch satellites? Okay, so they have to think of what that does to latency. All right, so you're cutting transmission off to one satellite because it's going, bye-bye. The next one's coming in, you have to reestablish with that. That is a service interruption for a momentary, could be up to 100 milliseconds, okay? So a significant period of time. And you have to do that 4 times a minute.
Does
How
weather,
is
does,
that
does weather
rely-
play a part in that too, Dave?
It's, well,
I mean, if there's
solar flares, atmospheric weather, certainly all of it can influence that. Part of the limited, sandbox that design engineers get to play in with fiber is that we don't have to deal with all of the outside variables that could affect the signal, because the fiber, inside that fiber, the core of that fiber is very consistent. It's very pure, and we can count on it. Can't count on the transmission medium for fixed wireless or for any signal that goes through the air. And many things, and all of the things that can affect unlicensed fixed wireless or licensed fixed wireless without great design engineering in the atmosphere are consistent and certainly affect satellite. But in addition to those, you have the complications in space, okay? Collision protection is another thing with satellites. And I won't go into a lot of it, but in early on, there were, I believe, 25,000 avoidance processes that had occurred with Starlink with only 6,000 birds up in the air, okay? Every single one of those detracts from that satellite's useful life, because the useful life is determined by the available fuel, and fuel is used in those avoidance procedures. So we don't know, again, what we don't know. What about when that's 42,000 and that's just one, LEO vendor, that's just one constellation? Then with everything else that happens going up and down, there's a number of opportunities. But again, weather is a significant part of the problem with meeting the reliability part of the act itself, of the IIJA and BEAD.
So you
if
can't
you wanna,
rely. You can't rely on a technology that relies on good weather.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Right.
It's a good way of putting it.
Pretty simple.
So Dan, you laughed at the technology neutral part. So you said if it was that, so is it because they changed? I think they changed the standards, or they basically to suit these other.
Correct. So they're putting their hands on they're putting their thumb on the scale in order to make it more palatable for them.
What they claim, I think, was an even playing field.
It's not.
Yeah.
No.
But here's the other thing that really makes me kind of worry about it, because we're going from administration to administration. Nobody wants to admit that anybody did anything wrong, and everybody wants to take credit that everything that is going right goes right. Well, so far, nobody can take credit for anything that's going on. But one of the key points Dave brought up is that this went to the NTI. Let the states do this. Mm-hmm. Let the states be in control of how they're going to deploy the monies to give everybody the broadband service, right? Mm-hmm. So on one hand, we've got one administration that says, let the states do all this. And now that very same administration is telling you, let the states do this as long as they do what we tell them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not a good look.
The introduction of the restructuring policy notice on June 6th of this year ran into a number of the very mature strategies that NTIA was trying to deploy prior. And they did it in such a way that it accommodated more sub-grantee applications for service. Mm-hmm. And they did it on the basis of it being technology neutral, but it isn't technology neutral. If you simply look at what you're getting for every dollar that you spend, all right? You take a look at fiber, you're getting a network that has probably a 50-year useful life, okay? Mm-hmm. When you take a look at satellite, we've already said that LEOs are 5 years, and then you have to replace them. Unlicensed fixed wireless has several problems, one of which is you certainly have technology that has to be refreshed every 5 to 7 years. But you also have the fact that once you deploy your network, that can be infiltrated with other networks that can reduce your capacity in a real large way very quickly, okay? Because it's unlicensed. Anyone can use it, okay? So unlicensed fixed wireless has problems that may be unsolvable in those terms. Yet, it might be the only way to be able to get to people in certain outlying areas that you can't reach otherwise.
And precision ag is going to be necessary as well.
Absolutely. John Deere is doing a lot, okay, in data collection and being able to, on a real-time basis, vary the type and the quantity of seed, for example, that are deployed in the field because of moisture content and things of that sort. So those are all, advanced services that aren't future. They're here right now, okay? So back in 2019, 2020, when we were looking at, speeds and latency and things of that sort, we weren't looking at, Department of Transportation, smart vehicles, for example. You deal with 100 milliseconds when you're talking a vehicle to the network, you've got a wreck, right, real quickly. So there are those sorts of requirements, but there are also the requirements, as I said, that are unknown, okay? Who would have known that AI was going to take off as quickly as it has? Well, you know what? The AI engineers probably had an inkling, but they didn't.
It's funny you're mentioning AI at this point because Josh mentioned that this is my second podcast. Mm-hmm. On the first podcast, I said I am AI, but I did not understand it meant artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. I thought it meant almost intelligent. Yeah, so that...
I thought you meant you weren't self-aware at that point. Yeah.
Well, not yet, and I still am not. But Actually, I am quite self-aware that I'm not AI as it stands today in the new definition. AI is such an interesting creature. I've had people and friends, and if you look on LinkedIn, there's people that are out there. They're utilizing AI to create a theme song for their company.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much you can do, and how quick it can do it. How much better will it be when they've got full infrastructure in play?
But they, and the thing is, they already know what those steps are.
Yes.
So generative AI is only one type of AI,
Right.
and that's what they're using. There are reasoning engines of AI that allow interaction with generative AI to be able to recreate more precisely what the human brain does. And that's what scares everybody like Elon Musk. He says, wait, we have to do a pause on AI development right now because we don't know the implications. All of that needs massive infrastructure, including the smart grid and smart metering that we were talking about with electricity. And that's why more than at any other time, the law, which is a bipartisan infrastructure law now, the IIJA's new name, once passed, is inclusive of all of those sort of broadband and control layer needs, and wants to build commonalities so that not only are they able to talk to each other, but they actually can supplement services here and there in different areas. It's also why the IIJA itself and the BEAD program allows other implementations of applications that were not broadband internet access service on that very same infrastructure. It was originally built for BEAD because it understood the larger scope of what was going to be required as far as that fabric of control that broadband provides. So.
Right. When are we going to get that AI Dan Levac theme song?
We've already got the Dan Levac theme. What is it? What do you call that? The
tagline?
The little
logo,
little man you made.
Oh, character
or whatever.
Yes,
you've got that. So let's get that in play, and then we can do the next.
Yeah,
tagline.
We could have a whole cartoon series.
So speaking of taglines,
you got another one?
I've got another one. In my opinion, we need to get rid of the term BEAD. I would like to hear it be referred to as GABI.
GABI.
The golden age of broadband infrastructure.
That'd be great.
I think GABI would be the way to go.
I think it would take an act of Congress.
That's all right. We'll go. I'm going to be going there soon. I'll start the conversation. Yeah, I'll start the conversation.
Right.
So again, I guess going back to this shakeup now. So theoretically, I mean, maybe not theoretically, this is what's happening: is that states can now they're going back to the drawing board in essence, right? And
don't say can.
Okay.
Okay. They must.
They must.
Okay.
Yep.
And is this the benefit of the bargain stage? Is that what that is going on?
Benefit of the bargain is a nice marketing term.
Yeah, I wanted you to explain what this was.
Yeah. So this is the round within which the other technologies can be incorporated for evaluation as to whether or not they meet the BEAD requirements. The big thing that the restructuring policy did is to reduce everything against the law, by the way, reduce everything to the cheapest cost. Okay? So now NTIA would have you believe, and don't believe it, state broadband offices do not believe this, they would have you believe that you're going to be fine if you just pick the cheap guy. Okay? The problem is, does the cheap guy meet the criteria, the statutory requirements in the BEAD program? Okay? And that's where the shortfall is. Okay? Now, they've tried to introduce things such as for unlicensed, fixed wireless, introduce a 5 megabit surrogate speed as being good enough, if you can show that every customer in this sector area of this antenna can receive 5 megabits consistently, that's fine to meet the 100 and the 20. By the way, they don't talk about upload speed. They only talk about
only one way.
download. And so if you can meet that, we'll figure that you can actually make the 120. Well, nothing could be farther from the truth. There is no engineering basis for them to say that. And so I dug into it. And what it was one vendor's report that they gave. They reported that the speeds that subscribers were getting was between 3 and 4 megabits per second. And so obviously, or maybe not obviously, but it seems as though NTIA took that because they noted that. They cited that report, okay, as the basis for their 5 megabit per second surrogate. And if that was the case, then, there were so many things wrong with that sample. By the way, you had to be a customer of the entity who presented that report to be able to gather the statistics in which that determination was made. Not only is that not supported by IEEE, the ITU, any credible engineering organization on the planet, okay? It's arbitrarily put in there, but it doesn't change the statutory requirement of 100 down, 20 up, which is woefully insufficient in its own right, okay? But the second prong of the statutory requirement is that need to support the future needs of residential and commercial, and then of 5G and other cellular technologies. And that part of it is crazy because if you break it down as an engineer, and I mean this is the back of a napkin type analysis that is needed to refute these other technologies, you need to be able to do that within the context of what the requirements are right now for existing applications, okay? VR, virtual reality, one link is 130 megabits down, okay? It just doesn't fly. So there are a number of different things like that that have to be reconciled, and I believe the reconciliation is going to happen at the moment of turn up when they're able to meet the 120 requirement. But at that point in time, the actual everyday requirement of consumers is far beyond that. And so then the lawsuits start.
I've got a quick question for Josh.
Yeah.
So as we do this, Dave made a comment about writing on the back of a paper napkin, right? He's so far beyond that. Dave's done many white papers on this topic and other topics that are very pertinent to what we're talking about. Is there a way that we could have a link for our listeners and viewers that could access Dave's white papers so that they could read them for themselves?
Yeah.
Appreciate that. That'd be good.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Great.
Make that available. So I guess at the end of the day, is anything going to change with this, or is this just drawing out the process?
Unfortunately, I think, and then Dan, you're going to have your own ideas on this, but I think unfortunately what has happened so far in the BEAD program is that the process is very iterative. In other words, they get to a point in the process and then they say, we have this problem, and then they make a rule about that. What they can't do by doing that is they can't get around the statutory requirements, okay? I have lawyer friends who will say that never stopped a government agency before. The fact that it's against the law to do it. Well, yeah, but then there's a lot of lawsuits in the meantime.
Speaking of the agencies, so Dave, earlier you made a comment regarding that we've had all of these iterations or attempts at providing broadband for all. And it seems to me like there were different agencies involved in different aspects and different releases. One of the things I learned quickly in Washington is that when you talk to the agencies, one agency does not want to step on the other agency's toes in regards to either a comment or a concern or a rule. So we have to be cognizant of who the players are, and it's always extremely difficult once a decision has been made to walk it back. Mm-hmm. I would ask them, like almost every other agency that's in the government today, follow the science. If you would follow the science, I believe your answer is very clear.
Yeah.
And I think that according to the law, they're supposed to make sure that we have this ability to be future-proof. Mm-hmm. We've given them that ability to be future-proof. Now just follow the science.
And the thing about future-proof, quote unquote, is that we know what the future is in terms of time. It's 10 years. It's the performance period that's identified in the law itself. Okay, or in the no phone in the rules. It's very interesting that so many modifications were done with manipulation to get around different tenets of the way the federal government operated before. Last year in December, and I swear this had to have been done for private equity. I told you. Fiber has a useful life of 50 years for all intents and purposes. With the federal government, when they give money in a program, the Department of Commerce typically links the federal interest period to the useful life of the asset, okay, which is good. That's real. Taxpayers are getting their money's worth. They didn't do that. Well, they modified it for the BEAD program. In December of last year, the BEAD program said, what we're going to do is make it 10 years. So the federal interest period is now 10 years. That's 1/5 the useful life of fiber, okay? Mm-hmm. So now what they're saying is ignore all that, okay? And taxpayers lose because we should have interest in that asset for its useful life. But we're losing 4/5 of that value. Okay, we're only there for 10 years. But second of all, that's twice the useful life of a LEO satellite. Okay, so what you're saying is you're building in the need that BEAD is not just paying for an initial deployment of satellites, 42,000 by Starlink's count. In their platform. And I don't know if they're going to allocate all of that to BEAD, so don't beat me up about that. But the fact is that those satellites are used in such a way and have a useful life of half of the performance period. So it's got to include a launching of an entire new constellation and possibly a third. If you take a look at the fact that 5 years is the max life of each satellite. So it could be 3. And that has to be quantified in terms of the money that is allocated to that sort of technology.
So with that technology, another question, because I don't know the answer to this, if the satellites have already been in existence, and it's already an available service, why then would there be money given or granted that they could have had customers signed up for already?
Well, I will say you can't go that far because the satellites that are up there right now, the V2 satellite, doesn't meet the BEAD qualification.
But you hit on, because I think maybe you saw the same thing that I did, what Gary Bolton, the president of FBA, said, if a subscriber wanted it, meaning satellite, they would already have it. They could have it right now.
Yep.
That's. I'm just taking that question to the next step on why are they paying for something they could already have?
Right.
Well, and again, you take a look at the BEAD program in general and what we're trying to do. All taxpayers in America pay for this, okay? So do we all believe that all of us should have access to broadband? Certainly, okay? But the fact is that we want to get the best bang for our buck in terms of what we deploy. We don't want, agencies like NTIA making technology decisions because they're the ones they would have you believe to conform to the restructuring policy, you must give it to the cheapest provider. Fiber is, in most cases, more expensive up front.
Right.
Okay, but it's of significantly higher value.
And a longer useful life.
Well,
it's-
and again, I'm going to hit on the trickle down fibernomics again, because you have to look.
Can we put a ticker up how many times you say that?
I think you should. How many other valuable opportunities do we have with fiber other than just that end user? There's so much more to it.
We talked about it in the different divisions of the IIJA. I've got included now in this package of articles, you'll see an entire, more than 3,000 word article on the issue, on that issue itself. There's a lot, countless is the answer to your question, Dan, because we don't even know how many. 50 years from now, we'll still be finding new uses for that fiber.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, and we talked a little bit about the introduction was kind of like this mix of public and private investment. So how should broadband infrastructure be determined or controlled? Is that at the national, the state, the local, the private level? How, in your opinion, how should that be determined?
Mix.
A mix?
I think it has to be a mix, because there are certain, like to our points earlier, there are certain applications that financially for an independent or a private company wouldn't go after. But we should not make that a defaulto fact of not being able to provide the service to someone that needs it. But a point you made, the word cheap has been used on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
And it's been used by the government.
And it's
the
appropriate.
cheapest system.
Yeah, yeah.
You get what you pay for.
Right.
Yep.
Josh, you've known me for a long time. I hate the word cheap. If there's something that is inexpensive, I would prefer to have the term inexpensive, but show me the value
Or the best
associated
value.
with it.
Yeah.
There's always value. With cheap, there's no value associated with it. It's like, I'm going to throw this at it only because it's cheap and that's what you can afford. I think that's a big mistake.
It's a Band-Aid.
Absolutely
It's
wrong.
a Band-Aid. And the fact is as well that when you begin to talk about broadband within the context of the IIJA and the other unknown applications that we have that will need that, what are we going to do at that point? Are we going to end up putting fiber in anyway? Yes. All right. And so we will have blown, $42.45 billion or however much we spend on other than fiber projects. The other technologies as well, there is no permanent infrastructure. After the performance period, Starlink could say, you know what, we don't like this business case anymore. We're going away.
Yeah.
Fixed wireless, unlicensed fixed wireless, unfortunately, it's usually very brave entrepreneurs who are out there trying to accomplish something, and they don't always succeed.
Here's something I want to put in a word for the organizations that we represent, okay? And that many people within this industry are represented by.
Yeah.
You've got PCCA, they're the deployers. You've got FBA, technological. You've got IEEE. You've got SCTE. All of these organizations set standards nationally for deployment and for minimum rates and for best practices. I'll throw in the CGA, Common Ground Alliance. Those guys are out there for the purposes of safety to make sure that we do all these things correctly. When we support these organizations, we have to look at this as more than being an individual driven. We have to look at this being more than a company driven, or for that matter, even an organizational driven proposal. This is about infrastructure for the entirety of this country that affects every man, woman, and child, right? That's who we should be doing this for, is to be giving this to everybody that that should have access to it. So
if it seems like Dan and I have religion and are it's true. We are passionate about this because it is such an important issue, and we are at such an inflection point right now. We can see what's going to happen if we go one way or another way, and most entities who are those organizations understand very clearly, because, this isn't our first rodeo. We've been doing this with the internet. We've been projecting internet growth since the early 1990s, okay? So, I can tell you right now the compound annual growth rate of the internet is anywhere between 20 and 50%. Internet traffic doubles every 2 to 3 years, okay? So we're not talking about unknowns here. We're not talking about designing for that thing that's called the future. We're talking about designing right now specifically for a 10-year performance period, which is likely to start in 2030, okay, continue for 10 years. That is a slice of time that we can define. We know what technologies and applications will come out in that length of time, and we know what's going to be required in terms of access service to support that.
So every organization that I referred to, every company that's out there, to see if we can tie this together, every one of them want to do one thing.
Yeah.
They want to win.
Yeah.
Right? Winning, winning, winning. Let's never get tired of winning. Does that sound familiar to you?
That's
Why would
exactly
why
right.
would an administration that has that philosophy want to go in this direction? I don't understand it.
Well, we don't want to necessarily get political.
No, not at all.
But the fact is that what we're advocating is very consistent with what the current administration at a high level is trying to accomplish.
Right. So we want to make sure that we're putting them in a position to win.
We need to be vocal about what we're doing so that we can say, hey, wait a minute,
This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I mentioned at the beginning, like, this is not something new, this infrastructure investment. We've been doing this for centuries. Looking back at some of those that we've done in the past, which ones do you think were successful, and what can this program or the broadband infrastructure initiative take from those? I know, Dan, you mentioned the telecom, and so just looking at those past infrastructure, again, what can we learn from that can push this
look at
forward?
Electric utilities.
Electric, highways, and telephone.
Yeah.
What do they all have in common? They all reach the people.
And interesting, when there was not the basis for a public-private partnership, the municipality, like with water and things of that sort, took it over because it was that important, okay? It was vital to the community. I don't care who you are, where you live, you need water, and that's becoming that way with broadband.
Absolutely. It's going to become an essential utility.
So then I think you also mentioned, like, this is not the first rodeo in terms of trying to bring broadband to everyone.
Right.
Why weren't they successful, those other programs?
Number one, they shot too low. Sound familiar? Okay. So 25.3 was going to fix nobody anywhere, just like 120 right now. If you're building for that or, evaluating for that, you're in, 2020
It's a
or
Band-Aid
before.
approach.
Yeah,
It's just a stopgap.
So I think there's many things like that. I think taking the inexpensive or proximate way out, the exercise or the project that takes the smallest amount up front is going to return exactly what you said. When it's completed, it's, little in, little out, frankly. And fiber takes an investment. It takes thought in terms of how to lay that infrastructure in existing society, okay? What roads do you dig up if you dig up roads? Where do you go aerially? How do you want this to play with other utilities in the area? Those are all issues that design engineers deal with every day in terms of building things. And if you look at what we're talking about in the BEAD program, we're talking within the context of providing service to people that don't have that service right now because it's uneconomical to provide it or uneconomical within the context of the business case of existing ISPs or existing providers. There is, when you talk about should government control broadband or whatever, I shy away from that because I look at what happened in telecommunications and tariffs, and I've written hundreds of tariffs, and they're just, it's horrible.
You made a comment about the cost going to the end user and being the most, we'll call it inexpensive, right? Because I don't like the other word.
Yeah.
Now,
networks are cheap.
Okay.
Cost to customers are inexpensive.
there you go.
Yeah.
So going to the customer, let's say we've got someone in the rural, we got to get a fiber to them. That fiber has to pass through communities that may not have been built without going to that customer.
Yeah.
So by passing that community, now we have the business case to make it viable.
So let me expand on Dan's point just a little bit because this is a huge thing. It's in one of my articles as well. When you build, you've got smart meters, you got smart water meters, you've got broadband internet access service that you need. Okay, you know what all those three have in common? They want to be physically isolated from each other because they have proprietary protocols that operate on their own medium, okay? But do you know what the cost difference is in laying a 4-strand fiber as opposed to a 1-strand fiber? 0, okay? The cost of the medium in a fiber build represents 25 to 30% of the cost of that project. 70, 75% of that cost, sometimes even 80%, is the labor. So that money is going, to your point, right back into the community in terms of hiring people that are building the infrastructure that's going to last 100 years.
And those people will pay taxes.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So my final question here, Dan, I'll start with you. So if you were a lawmaker, that's a scary scenario. I don't know that I want to imagine that, but or running BEAD or running these programs, what would you do?
Well, again, based on the law that's in existence, I would have to go with fiber. I would want to make sure that we build, like it's beyond just the deployment of the fiber and the infrastructure. Dave just made the point about jobs, creating more jobs, but long-term jobs. And these jobs are well-paying jobs. These are very, very good. This is not just about getting by. It's about creating a living.
So you would focus on the longevity, the jobs.
The
side of it.
ROI.
Right. Long term.
The long-term return on investment, you cannot compare fiber with any other medium that's out there or any other technology as they want to brand it. There'd be no, not even close.
Dave?
I have 2 answers for you. The first answer is, given the fact that we have an existing law, okay, I would do exactly what Dan just pointed out. But my ideal scenario is I would go back to Congress and I would say, okay, look, fiber is what we need as the infrastructure for everything, but take all of the limits off in terms of what communities can use it for, because they're the ones who can determine the best public interest, okay? The way in which that money is going to be spent to improve the lifestyle of, their population. So maybe it is to build an infrastructure in the downtown communities of, commerce, basically, and, branch out from that and certainly include all residences, but make sure you don't lose, the economic benefit of building infrastructure that the community at large can use through institutions that probably are located downtown. Then I would add the ability that the subgrantee, the applicant, can include a number of different technologies. They don't have to just use one. And the performance requirements are tiered as well, so that you've got, you want to build this and it requires core fiber in in a location, a metropolitan location, all right, that's got to be capable of a terabit, bidirectional performance. As you go out into the suburbs, into the more rural areas, then that's something as well. All of these locations that we're talking about that are candidates for BEAD money are little islands of concentrations of people, okay? So you find that out real quickly in the rural areas. There's not one here and 30 miles down the road, there's another one 30 miles down the road. Now, what you do is you go 30 miles down the road and you'll find a cluster of 4 or 5, okay? And then over here, same thing. Mm-hmm. There might be a community of 1,200 people that represent the center of that organization, of that thing. In Florida, what we've done, our governor has instituted by law, statutorily, the requirement for local technology planning teams. And there is one per county in every county in Florida. And that planning team, that's what you read, the fact that I was involved in the Marion County. Mm-hmm. That's where I live, right? So I said, all right, I need grassroots information. What are people really concerned about at this level? And that gives it to me. So you do that everywhere around the country, and that way all voices are represented in terms of comprising the need. What is the need? And then you go from there. I think there should be a statutory requirement for that. But absent a new law, mm-hmm. with what we have right now, it's just build fiber.
And there is another little rabbit hole I would like to go into right now about BEAD, right? Mm-hmm. And it's BABA compliance.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that for a couple of reasons. The first one being is that in order to be compliant, when this all originated back in 1920, mm-hmm. 21, many companies had an opportunity because they said it was going to be written into the BEAD program that you would have to be BABA compliant or Build America, Buy America. So many companies invested billions of dollars to prepare for this. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden with this change in plan, there are no requirements for the other technologies to be compliant.
Right.
So yeah, we spent a lot of money and paid a lot of taxes and did a lot of things to prepare for it. I mean, our company, in large part because of the program, spent over $60 million mm-hmm. to provide for additional product that would be utilized within the BEAD program.
And the change did nothing to benefit Americans. Not in any way, mm-hmm. because there's nothing that is built elsewhere that couldn't actually be built in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I've been in a scenario where because of supply chain issues, maybe fiber availability becomes a little scant. Maybe I go to EMEA to get fiber at some points. Allowances for that are fine to keep the project moving. But the overarching rule should actually be BABA. It just should.
And I mean, like Dave is not only cerebral, he was also a deployer as well from that perspective. And he's built many, many miles of fiber plant, both aerial and underground.
6 companies.
And so there you go. So times 6.
Yeah.
So he is well aware of what it means to have support from a domestic company as well. Well, so not only for the fiber, but for the hardware and for the connectivity.
Well, and it kind of brings it full circle because one of the first things you said was, it's infrastructure, not a service. So if if all these companies are investing in manufacturing products and not, and ends up the money goes to a service. To your point before, like what did we invest all that for?
Correct.
Well, great stuff. Great conversation. Thank you guys so much for being on the podcast. Dan, you want to get your tagline in one more time?
Which one?
The new one, I guess. Try it out.
The trickle-down fibernomics. That's the place to look. I mean, it's
you heard it here
it's all things for all people.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, Josh, we're just getting started. And I thought this, might last
another 3 hours.
Another 3, 4.
This is my limit for Dan. I've reached my limit. But we can certainly have you back for another discussion.
No, it's always good. I think this is exactly when a podcast like this is very useful. State broadband offices have a lot of, very intimidating decisions in front of them right now. And as Dan brought up earlier, the field keeps changing. It's like, okay, we know what the BEAD rules are now. What will they be next week? And that same thing just happened with the FAQ version 12 that came out, a few days ago. It changed it again. And we didn't talk about this much, but they completely ignored that second prong of the law and, in my opinion, opened themselves up to, significant risk. States will take a look at that and think, geez, if we're making a decision and we haven't got this guidance from NTIA, are we exposed? Any state broadband office should be thinking that. I'm not a lawyer, but I operationalize what's built into the law after advice of counsel, always. But it's an operational issue, and the states are facing it right now. It's not even next month. It's right now.
And to
right
Dave's
this minute.
point about the timing of this, a shameless plug for connecting the lines, I would ask anybody that has the courage to listen to this one, right? Anybody that knows me, I would ask you to send it to 2 friends. Anybody that knows
Same
Dave,
here. Yeah.
send it to 2 friends.
Send
because
to
we
5
need
friends.
to get the
I don't
word
have
out.
as many as Dan
We
does.
need to get the word out.
Yeah.
It's really imperative on this. So when you hear or see this, please forward it on and let people hear this.
Thanks for the plug, Dan. Thanks guys for being on.
Sure.
Check out Dave's white papers. We'll send a link out to that, and connect with Dan on LinkedIn. Always post interesting content. Thank you guys so much, and continue listening to Connecting the Lines.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank Dave.